With that live, please. As I understand it, this takes us through to essentially in the recommendations to the Ratana Gym Shed one on page 1, 2, 3. However, I'd just like to question the submission from the officer comment around suggested new building McIntyre Reserve Ongaiti. The officer comment is that they're delegated, they have their own budget, etc. Just are people happy with that? It just seemed to me as though they hadn't put a sum of money, but they had actually requested in some shape or form a new building. Councillor Dalgety.
Yeah, I agree that the buildings there are getting very run down, but I think from reading through this, that they just need a hand with process as to how you might go about renewing some buildings there.
Okay, there is an action there that council staff will meet. So I'm reasonably happy. I just want to make sure that there wasn't going to be a councillor that says, well, they have asked for something and we didn't actually vote on it. No, fine. Move on to the replacement of the storage shed at Ratana Community Gym. This is page 1, 2, 3. Submission of Charlie Neto, chair of the community board. So the recommendation is that council does or does not provide monetary support without a figure in there to the Ratana Gym for a new storage shed. It seems to be, is there any further detail around the costing?
No, we have gone back to Mr. Medu, but at that time he didn't have total plans or what they were thinking of the value.
Somebody want to so move? Let me guess, Councillor Moore.
Council do not
Do
provide monetary support to the value of, well, take the value off,
So,
to the Ratana Gym for a new storage shed.
okay, so you're saying we do not provide. Looking for a seconder to that position. Councillor Carter's seconding it. Do you wish to speak to it?
Again, it's one of those things that we haven't scoped out and no idea what the cost is, and again, unbudgeted money as well.
Any other speakers? No, put to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Recommendation 13, that council reduces its expenditure and keep rates increases as low as possible. This is reducing the event sponsorship to 25,000 and removing the annual Path to Wellbeing Conference Parks Upgrade Partnership and Placemaking Funds, and encouraging them to apply. So that's the recommendation. Staff, does staff get? Galen, do you wish to take us through this in any further detail?
No.
Somebody wanting to open it up by way of a recommendation?
Question, please.
Do that.
I'm just, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the annual, with the wellbeing conference that you mentioned there. Can you tell me what that is?
That hasn't been held for quite some time. It wasn't there's an amount in the budget to hold that, and conferences have been held in the past. We're guest speakers, we've invited them. Various people from the community have attended, depending on what the guest speak was about. But it's been quite a few years since it's been held.
Thank you.
And literally it hasn't happened for probably 3 years.
More than that, I think. Yeah.
Councillor Wilson.
Looking to move recommendation 13.
You're wishing to move recommendation 13 in its entirety there?
In its entirety.
Looking for a seconder to that. Councillor Moore, seconding, you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I do, because when you first look at this recommendation and you look at the report, it does seem a little bit Christmas Grinch-like that the funds are being removed from the community. But the more you understand it, the pathway through the annual plan does not have a monetary value attached to it. So given the size and the significance of what these things could be, significantly more what's already available in these funds, I think the door is still open to some meaningful engagement and to work with community groups to develop. So I'm quite happy that that is a better process and forms perhaps better engagement with council and staff and officers for better outcomes. So I actually quite like the way this one's worded.
Councillor?
I'm going to speak against it. I believe the Parks Upgrade Partnership particularly is an avenue for smaller groups to come directly to council. It still goes through a council meeting prior to approval, and it can be done in various times of the year rather than waiting for the annual plan process, which can be quite daunting and along a much longer pathway.
Councillor Doug?
Yes, I'm speaking against it and in support of the submissions from groups such as the Taihape Community Board, who have just what Councillor Dalgety said, see this as a motivator for community groups. I'm not saying that I wouldn't remove the annual Path to Wellbeing Conference, but the Parks Upgrade Partnership Fund and the Event Sponsorship Fund, I wouldn't like to see them removed or reduced.
So you had 2 speakers against. Further speakers and 2 speakers for. Any further speakers? Go back to right of reply.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just like to reference the Parks Upgrade Partnership, and as has been specifically referenced by the previous speakers, councillors, if you're going to do a Parks Upgrade program of any great significant measure, it's going to take you a year to put through. So to suggest that you're not going to be able to do that because you're going to be held up by an annual plan or a long-term plan process, I think is a little misleading, because that's what Parks Upgrade processes are about. And if we look at the ones that we've seen recently here in Martin, and what is also being developed at Wilson Park and what is also being developed in Taihape, they have spanned that period of time. So I don't see this motion as being a detriment to the Parks Upgrade ability for communities to work with council.
Can I just ask staff how much money is sitting in Parks Upgrade Partnerships that have already been determined that is currently unspent? In other words, they're waiting for process or etc. So
carried over from other
Yeah.
years. It's probably between 50 to 80,000.
So there's money at Taihape in terms of the playground,
Yes,
and that's 50.
yes. That came through in the annual plan submission. So I hadn't included that, sorry. But there's 50,000 at the Bulls Domain. There's still some money left over for Northern Whanganui Rugby. And there's another one which I can't think of, but I know there's a third one.
Wilson Park.
Yes,
So we're now talking a couple of $100,000 potentially.
including the playground, yes.
Just want to put this in perspective of money and remind councillors around this was your position as council going into this annual plan round. Go back. Sorry, right of reply.
I believe I've had my right.
Yeah, nothing you want to add?
Well, the second one, yes. Only to add that those sums of money that have just been mentioned by the officer were approved at annual plan process time.
Right, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? One, two, three, 5. Carried. Those against? 2, 3, 4. I thought I'd better vote.
Can I have my vote counted, please?
Certainly.
Thank you.
And me too, please.
So we have votes recorded against in terms of councillor Duncan and Dalgety. So thank you very much. Councillor Calkin.
I just note in there that submitter 233 talked about the intention of Hunterville Rugby Club Committee to undertake lighting upgrade, but I don't see any mention in terms of comment that we'll close the loop back to them on that process. Can we just make sure that that's...
I got that point too.
I'd just like to say that they have applied through the parks upgrade the current year, and we're just working through that process with them.
Thank you. That takes us on to recommendation 14. The council suggests that representatives of the Poppy Places Trust apply to the Community Initiative Fund and we fund it essentially. Does council have a view? Somebody want to put a recommendation out? Councillor.
The top recommendation that council suggests the representatives from Poppy Places Trust apply to the Community Initiatives Fund.
You saying apply? Looking for a seconder to that, councillor Moore, are you seconding that? Do you wish to speak to it?
Just that we've already sort of set this precedent recently with a request that came through that the funding request actually fit that particular initiative fund and is a better avenue for them to go to seek those funds.
Any other speakers? Vote for vote. Those in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you. Council staff, that deals with all of the recommendations as I understand it, other than the recommendation that I have to go back to as well.
Did you want to make a point about the salary page?
Yes, so councillors, excuse me,
Put on the table.
you have it as table document, the salary section of deliberations report 8485. Who's taking us through this? You, Sharon. Let's go ahead.
Right, good afternoon everyone. So there was unfortunately a section omitted from the report that was presented to you, and you'll see that there's an additional paragraph in the supplementary handout. So essentially, as you'll be aware, council has set a position of a 6% increase to pay bands, and that was subject to some information that we would receive from Strategic Pay in their March 2023 salary data. That data has essentially confirmed that position, and what that shows us is that based on the national local government market median, the movement to 1 March was 5.5%, noting that the movement was the greatest over the last 6 months at a rate of 4.4%. You'll see some quotes there, and none of that will be a surprise. Very significant movements, the highest I've seen in 20 years, and that's related to inflation, skill shortages, attraction and retention. The additional bit of information for consideration that was omitted from the original report is just around the extrapolation of that data out to 1 July. And based on the movement from the past 6 months, that would suggest that, you know, even though that position of the 6% is potentially slightly light, it's something that we would be able to work with. I'm really happy to take questions on that.
So essentially, we took a crack at this and put in a figure of 6%. It came out at 5.5, and the indication at the time of setting this that we would go by that March figure. So the question is, A, do you want to see it retained at 5.5, which is the figure that it's referenced to, or the 6% that you indicated with regard to the comments around the future in terms of extrapolation out to June, July? Or so probably looking for a motion in terms of where you see this. So 6% is sitting in your budgets as their estimate, and that's where we're going to base our position subject to this information. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, I'm happy to move at 6%. Absolutely agree with your explanation. There was a significant amount of work done through our workshopping at the time to reach that 6% figure, and I think what this report does really just reflects and highlights the difficult position that council has been in around that, and I think 6% is a fair place to put our stake in the ground, and noting that it is our consultation figure that we've gone out with, so I'm happy to support that.
Would you like to move that we reaffirm the council's
That
budget
position, yeah.
with regard to this figure?
I certainly would move that. That reaffirms the position in the consultation document. If those are the words that
Take questions, Councillor Moore.
Second it, once it gets written up there.
Third it is the
Could I ask
question.
a question, please? On the basis of a 5.5% median movement, then why does it say the provision of 6% is somewhat light?
Because what they're saying is that in the future it will move, the indications are it may move beyond that. But council made a decision that it would set the budget at that sort of figure. That, bearing in mind the March figures is the latest return which we've got.
Councillor, so the 5.5 figure relates to the position to March 2023. Our pay, or the annual plan starts on 1 July, and it was certainly my intention, and it may have been misunderstood, that the pay position was at 1 July. So if you extrapolate that as at 1 April, it was 5.5%. But the 6 months of the last 6 months of that period was 4.4 alone. Then if you were to kind of continue that curve broadly, you'd probably reach beyond 6% as at 1 July, which was led to that comment. Yeah.
Councillor Lauder.
With the question regarding what difference would 5.5 make on our rates?
In terms of dropping it. An answer?
What else?
£90,000, a third of a percent.
So you've spoken to it. The councillor Loudon seconded it. Any other speakers? Put it back to a vote. Those in favour? Motion carried. Thank you very much. That deals with that, reaffirms that position as effect.
Can I just have my conflict of interest noted?
Certainly.
That vote.
Did you get that? Yes. Thank you. That takes me back to jumping back on somewhere. Bear with me a second, please. Takes me back to recommendation 3. That with regard to the officer's comments made in response to submissions as listed in attachments, etc., council has considered the officer's comments and accepts them with amendments, because we've made some, noting that they will be included in council's response to submitters. Would somebody like to so move? Councillor Duncan moving. Councillor Calkin seconding. Closer in the deal. I'll put it to vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. With regard to submissions, is there anything further I need to do? So that takes us through.
You want Dave to put the spreadsheet up?
Yes.
Do you understand the position?
So you're in the position to be able to put a spreadsheet up in terms of the effect as of this time, subject to there are a couple of bits and pieces council staff are going to have to come back to us.
It's on there, we can't get it on there, sorry.
We haven't got the budget to get more screens.
Don't push your luck.
Okay, I'll ask you to ignore the top couple of lines under updated costs. I'll put them in there really for reference that I will speak to even though I may not be allowed. Our underlying cost structure doesn't kind of get finalised ever. It's always ongoing to increase costs. So just the risk of stating the obvious, just last week we've become aware of more operating costs that are going to impact next year. So what I've got here is deliberations amendments. Only one OPEX decision has been made today to increase, to spend 48 grand as a donation, not as a capital spend, even though we might end up owning the asset. It will be recorded as an OPEX cost possibly next financial year. There's two aspects of this. One is whether it should be in the budget, and another consideration is whether it should be rate funded. If it's not rate funded, it's debt funded. On the basis you want to, or you can make a budget cut elsewhere to offset the costs. On the basis you wish to rate fund this, it will increase rates by 0.179%, which will make the 10.01 10.19.
Which relates to an effect on ratepayer at 9. So take a percent off that. So we've made very little change. What about in terms of delaying, pausing the spend on civic buildings, Martin?
So for the capital programs, what we said there was we want to increase the project budget of Taihape, not next year's capital spend budget, just the project budget of 4.3 mil. So that won't impact next year's rates. That will impact our debt considerations, looking at mid to long-term debt. The 14 mil for this building, we said we park until next LTP, and we did say we'd allocate a spend of 300k to the new pathway. That will be constructed next financial year, so it'll be included in a future debt package we take out and be debt funded, and the depreciation on that won't kick in until the following year.
Perhaps the way that I see this is as a process going forward, perhaps you can email this out with staff comment.
Yeah. Well, I think as Worship's reference earlier was in the current LTP for 23-24, we had assumed to spend a capital spend on Martin Civic Centre, I think 5 million. And I think as Worship was saying, if we no longer spend that, because the decision today has been to review that at LTP, would there be some corresponding reduction somewhere or change?
Yeah. So all other things being equal, which we know they're not, all other things being equal, it would mean we could take out 5 mil worth of less debt. So the savings would be 5% of that on an annualised basis, 250 grand.
So perhaps what I would ask staff to do is to send out some advice and comments with regard to this. Obviously, the Chair of Finance will want this information as soon as it's available. Councillor Moore.
Yeah, just the comment Mr. Toons made about the 5% of 5 million to 250,000. I wonder whether we could put that in the spreadsheet and see where that, I think before we deliberate on the rates rise, it might be an effect that it comes down a little bit, which would be
okay. If I just
quite good.
The reality is that the effects are a year later, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
So it's not so much an annual plan consideration, it becomes the following year in terms of the depreciation schedule that's associated with the CapEx build. However, take a point.
But if I may just further to that, we don't currently have a balanced budget. So if we had a balanced budget and you make a cost savings, you can say, therefore rates can not go up as much. But when you don't have a balanced budget, your rates have to go up higher than your costs. So if you do make a saving, you don't necessarily reduce rates accordingly, you just close the gap quicker.
Perhaps council staff may also wish to advise us in terms of extra funding as to whether it can be a capex fund or its OPEX in nature, and regardless of which it is, whether it's funded by way of rates or by loan position, debt position.
So I missed the start of that, talking about what particular item?
So, for instance, if you take the 48k,
Yeah.
council faces an option here, doesn't it, in terms of whether it's going to be part of the loan fund and debt, or whether it's going to be part of whether it can be regarded as capex and etc.
Yeah, if we buy the lights and they stay on our ground, then it's a capex spend. If we give someone else the money to buy lights, it becomes a donation. But we actually end up owning the lights, I believe, because it's on our land. So in a roundabout way, we're going to end up owning this asset that the money is going to be spent on. My understanding.
Yeah. So, you know, perhaps in your summary of comments, that might be a good thing as to how you point out the funding of this. Anything else from councillor before we move on to other items? Councillor Wong.
I've got a just request from the finance director, perhaps with the decisions we've made today, a position on our debt level, which we can take back to the ratepayers, because that's been quite a concern to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That level of what time?
Next, until with the free waters.
There's going to be very, very little change here, because effectively even by pausing Martin,
Right.
all you're doing currently is shifting it from one year to the next. So, you know, where we'd run into potential debt positions, say year 6, it becomes year 7, etc.
I could add, Your Worship, the graphs that Dave has presented mostly include the options. Now we can't include them because they are now an LCP decision. And so it will look like we're spending $30 odd million less. But we're obliged to put it in because it was your preferred position. That makes sense. So it's going to look a lot better when Dave recuts this paper for your adoption of the only thing.
All right. Before I move on, anything else? No? Right. Quickly, who says that? I'll move on to item 7.2 of the agenda. This is the agreement Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. Aileen, do you want to take us through this?
Thank you, Your Worship. So as you're aware, we have the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs program, and this coming contract is actually going to be for 2 years. Previously, it's just been for 12 months. Sections 3.3 and 3.4 line out our procurement policy. So because the contract is because the contract is over 250,000, council would need to go out for open tender. Rule 11 of the policy allows us to opt out of that. Staff have suggested that because of the specialist service where the provider needs to have a really strong relationships with the people in our community, have a good working knowledge of our districts, businesses, the community workforce, etc., that we do enforce the opt-out rule and seek expressions from 2 providers, James Towers Consultants Limited and Ngāwairiki Ngāti Apa, believing that they both have the skills and expertise to do that, and have suggested, because of the time frame to do this, that a working group be formed consisting of His Worship the Mayor and some of the councillors to consider expressions of interest. Thank you.
Let's deal with this. First of all, could somebody remove the receipt of the report Councillor Wilson, Councillor Wong, those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. That council approves or does not approve the entering of the agreement with LGNZ for the delivery of this I'd like to move that. A second, Councillor Wilson. And one of the reasons I wanted to move it was to be able to speak to the success of this program. So our council and myself was one of a very small group of council of mayors that initiated this program. It was widely picked up because of the success of it, and it was expanded out by MSD on the basis of its success in employing people in sustainable jobs. And the latest figures show that Horowhenua has just pipped us by one placement. However, it could absolutely be argued that the Rangitikei has been the most successful council over the period of time in delivering this program. And a kudos that is due to the contractor and the team that have been put in place to deliver it has been amazing. It's probably the best program that MSD have seen in this space in terms of success. I have a meeting on Zoom meeting first thing tomorrow, but essentially with the funding that we've been given, MSD and Mayor's Task Force have looked through Emma to prioritise where the money would go. So we have 10 million year one, 8 million second year at the moment. And splitting that pool of money up, if one process would have been to give everybody a tiny slice of the pie, or another process was to be able to say some councillors have absolutely demonstrated demand by way of their success. And so they're looking at putting a tier process in place. And with the most successful councils, and there's a relatively small number of them, getting up to 400,000 year one as part of, and that's got to be finalised by Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, that process. But it looks as though we will get 400k. So that's the background. Take any questions around the background. All right, I've spoken to other speakers in regards to recommendation 2. No, put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Recommendation 3, that council authorises the mayor or chief executive to sign the agreement with the local for the delivery of the program. This is just making sure that that can happen by way of authorisation. Also moved, seconded. Councillor Duncan.
You might not wish to move your worship, given that you are.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't sign it because I'm signatory. That's what you're suggesting.
You shouldn't move it if you're going to be a signature. Yes.
Happy to move.
Not second.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak to it? Councillor Duncan?
No, just what you said, Worship, that basically to enable this to happen. Thank you.
All right, put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Can we scroll down, please? Pick up recommendation 4. Recommendation 4 is that we endorse applying the opt-out procurement, and if essentially we seek expressions of interest from James Towers Consultants and Ngawariki Ngāti Apa, and that a working group, including the Woods Worship, the Mayor and Councillors, be authorised to determine the means of delivery, etc. etc. I think I'd just like to suggest a very minor change, that a working group be set up by His Worship the Mayor and include councillors who are authorised to determine the means of delivery. The reason here for doing this in this way, rather than bringing it back to council, etc., is one of timing. Literally, it is being, boom, it's in front of us. And we could have gone down the path of saying, no, we will just roll it straight out. There was an option for that, rolling it straight out, back out to James. But in terms of the sensitivity around iwi relationships, I'd advise you don't do that. Take any questions or a comment around that. Councillor.
Are there any other contractors showing expressions of interest? You've only got two here, there must be more than that in the country.
Well, the report indicates we haven't gone seeking that and there isn't time available, but an expression of interest has been put out by Ngāti Apa. Councillor Loudon.
Just a question, like I haven't heard of Ngāti Apa and their program, what they've achieved. Can council staff?
Yeah. Look, I don't want to. It's probably unfair of me to comment on their relative merits. I think that it would be up to them to be able to put their merits to that working party that decides. In exactly the same way that the expectation to James that he would have the same opportunity to outline his team, his method of delivery, how that budget would be used, etc. So I think it'd be going back to both parties and saying, so as such, I think it's fair of me to comment on the success of James because this is how it's arisen. But to, without the information, to critique and explain to you how he intends to do it and how Ngāti Apa, I think I'd leave that till the working party too. So I'm not prejudicial in any way. Does that make sense? I got a few nods around the room. Councillor Morn.
Take your note about sensitivity issues around iwi, but I don't think that's the big picture is. It's just good business sense to have two people, two interested parties putting their case and, making a decision from there.
Yeah, I get that. Councillor Duncan.
Yes, just looking at the report once again, talking about the unique and specialist nature of the service. Is there not some quite serious weighting on James's behalf, given that he's delivered this for 3 years, extremely successfully, in fact, above expectations?
I think that becomes part of the consideration of the panel. Yeah, I think it's that simple. Look, I don't see a problem with me moving this. So I will move that. Seconded. Councillor Wilson.
Second.
Is that with the changes that in the wording that you mentioned?
That's in there. That a working group be set up by His Worship the Mayor.
Our councillors haven't been named, Your Worship.
No. One of the reasons for not naming it at the moment, there's a couple of, for instance, it may well be useful for me to consider whether there should be an iwi representative from this council. Neither of those councillors are here. But that would be part of my thinking. I know, Councillor Duncan, that you've had quite a high involvement in this process and have sat and say that's probably a given. Councillor Wilson.
Just on that and just rereading your words, and it's a minor thing, but it says that it includes councillors that would refer to the whole table. Should there not be numbers indicated in there, perhaps? And I'm just really referring to about your desire for the, and sensitive around some speed and time to get this decision made. But I just note it says, and to include councillors, which would be 12 councillors sitting around, and I don't think that's your intention. I think your intention is to move us to a smaller selected group, so perhaps there's a number of 5, your worship, maybe a number I could throw in there.
Yeah, I'm very quite happy with 5. Councillor,
I'd like to speak for this motion.
right. Any other speakers? Or go ahead.
Thank you. I just think this is really, really important. I also see that,
You're not being prejudicial to your point in terms of arguing for a particular party here.
thank you. I am very concerned around the time frame, so I'd support that we should get on with this and get it done as soon as possible, in fairness to both parties, given that it's to start on the 1st of July, I believe. And I think it shows respect to both parties.
Thank you. I was just concerned that you could have been prejudicing your position. Any further? Or my right or pie put it to vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Can we quietly say goodbye and thank you to those online, please? Oh no, I've got just the resolution to exclude the public. So the next part is a recommendation that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting. This is with regard to the waste transfer station operation tender recommendation report on the basis of what?
Commercial sensitivity.
I was suspecting you might say that. Councillor Wilson, are you wishing to so move?
I'm looking to so move as per circulated in the public order papers.
Seconded. Councillor Moore seconding. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. As you're disappearing into Never Never Land.